The Whispering Vault, CIA's most haunting intel facility. Before we begin, let me ask you, where are you watching this story from? Drop a comment and don't forget to subscribe for more secrets from the shadows. The voice seemed to whisper through the static of the opening frame, drawing the audience into the cold, echoing corridors of a place no map would mark. Beneath the familiar hum of Washington, D.C., under layers of concrete and steel that even the city above had forgotten existed, a hidden facility stretched into the darkness like the veins of some ancient, living creature. It was here in this underground maze that the CIA's most haunting intelligence had been collected, preserved, and sometimes buried. Not for lack of importance, but because the truths it contained were too sharp, too dangerous, too destabilizing for the light of day. The entrance was unremarkably simple steel door embedded in a brick wall of a nondescript government building. The kind that a passerby would walk past without a second glance, but it led into a world entirely removed from ordinary reality. To the uninitiated, it was nothing more than a doorway. Yet to those who had trained to understand the language of secrets, it was a threshold into a theater of shadows. The young recruit, barely 22, arrived that morning with a sense of nervous anticipation, clutching his clearance badge like a talisman against the unknown. He had been briefed on the facility, shown diagrams that traced corridors and chambers, told about the vaults and the protocols. Yet no lecture, no simulation, could have prepared him for the atmosphere of controlled silence that hung in the air like a living entity. His first steps across the grated floor produced a metallic echo that reverberated off the reinforced walls, each sound swallowed almost immediately by the immensity of the structure, a reminder that in this place noise was a privilege and silence was law. Senior operatives moved past him with practiced ease, their movements precise, almost choreographed. Eyes scanning the environment constantly, communicating with subtle gestures rather than words. There was an unspoken rule here. The walls remembered everything, the ceilings saw everything, and even the shadows themselves seemed to watch, adjusting to each visitor, each new presence. The recruit's handler, a woman with decades of service etched into the lines of her face and the quiet confidence of her stride, led him toward a series of reinforced chambers where the true work began. "Every door in this facility has a story," she murmured, her voice low, almost conspiratorial, "and every story is a test of your understanding. Step lightly, observe carefully, and remember that what you see is only part of the truth." They passed through a corridor lined with steel panels, each etched with barely perceptible codes and numbers markings that told of events, operations, and incidents that no history book would ever record. Cameras monitored movements and sensors scanned for the minutest irregularities, yet the young recruit could feel that the greatest vigilance came from the human element, the operatives whose intuition had been honed over decades there, instincts more reliable than any electronic system. At the end of the corridor stood the door itself, an imposing slab of reinforced alloy, embedded with biometric locks, retinal scanners, and codes that shifted daily. Beyond it lay the heart of the Whispering Vault, the repository of intelligence that had, at different times, altered the course of nations, saved lives, and exposed threats invisible to the outside world. The recruit's hand trembled as he placed his palm on the scanner, feeling the cold metal and the subtle vibration as the system authenticated his identity. The door opened with a pneumatic hiss that echoed down the corridor like a living sigh, revealing a chamber bathed in dim, sterile light. Rows of consoles, data arrays, and secure storage units stretched into the shadows, each one containing fragments of information, intercepted communications, and files so classified that even mentioning them outside these walls could endanger lives. As the recruit stepped inside, the weight of history pressed down, not physically, but through the sheer presence of accumulated secrets. Here, in this subterranean cathedral of espionage, every whisper mattered. Every glance, every misstep could ripple through operations thousands of miles away. The recruit understood, perhaps for the first time in his life. The true meaning of being invisible, of moving through a world that observed without being observed, of understanding that in intelligence, silence often spoke louder than words. And then, from the far corner of the room, a subtle vibration in the air, almost imperceptible, drew his attention to a bank of servers humming quietly, their lights pulsing like the slow beat of a hidden heart. It was a reminder that even in this place, the vault was alive, constantly recording, cataloging, remembering. The first lesson had been taught without a word spoken in the whispering vault. Nothing truly disappeared, and every door led to a deeper truth waiting to be discovered. The recruit's journey into the shadows of intelligence had only just begun, and as he glanced at his handler, he realized that the next steps would not just test his skills, but his courage, his discretion, and his understanding of a world built entirely on secrets. "Remember," she said softly, "every whisper has weight, and every door beneath the city holds a story that could change everything." The recruit had barely taken his first cautious steps into the chamber when the walls seemed to close in with the weight of centuries of secrets. Each hum of the servers and each flicker of the fluorescent lights created shadows that danced along the edges of the consoles, whispering stories that had no voice yet screamed with the weight of consequences. "Pay attention to the silence," his handler murmured, guiding him past a row of secured terminals, "because it often speaks louder than any confession or report." As he moved deeper into the vault, a low, almost imperceptible vibration traveled through the flora resonance that seemed to echo from deep beneath the city, like the heartbeat of the hidden world itself. At first, it was easy to dismiss as the building settling, machinery operating in the depths, or the ambient noise of a massive underground facility. Yet those trained to listen knew better. These echoes were not random. They were the remnants of communications, intercepted signals, and encoded messages long buried, still resonating through the metal and concrete of the vault. The recruit felt a shiver run down his spine as he realized that the room itself was alive with information, a living memory of operations conducted decades ago. Every intercepted conversation, every hidden file, every intelligence coup or failure had left an imprint, vibrating silently, waiting for the right eyes or ears to perceive them. He passed a terminal displaying old surveillance feeds, images of agents moving through foreign cities, blurred faces and shadowed figures performing acts that history would never record. He could almost hear the faint whispers of those long-gone voices trapped in the data, fragments of conversations that had shaped wars, toppled regimes, and saved countless lives. "The echoes are everywhere," his handler said, as if reading his thoughts. "Sometimes you hear them, sometimes you see them, sometimes you feel them. The trick is understanding what is real and what is an imprint of the past." The recruit turned a corner and entered a subchamber filled with rows of glass cabinets, each containing physical evidence, encrypted disks, and handwritten notes on thin, fading paper. The faint tapping of a hidden air vent created a rhythm that seemed almost like Morse code, each beat connecting to a memory, a mission, or a message that had never reached its intended recipient. As he moved past these archives, a sudden, subtle flicker on one of the monitors caught his momentary flash of an unknown symbol, a face partially obscured by shadow, and then it vanished. His handler stopped him immediately. "You saw that, didn't you? Don't look away." The vault allows glimpses, brief as they may be, but those glimpses are tests. If you ignore them, you lose valuable context. If you linger too long, it can trap you in the past. He realized she was speaking not just metaphorically, but literally. The vault was designed to challenge perception, to teach recruits that intelligence was more than facts, it was patterns, memories, and echoes that required careful listening. Every hum, every vibration, every flicker of light was a piece of an intricate puzzle, a story waiting to be reconstructed by those patient and skilled enough to perceive it. And as he moved further into the room, the echoes became clearer, like fragments of conversation slipping through the thin veil between past and present. names he had never heard, operations he could barely comprehend, whispers of betrayals and alliances so delicate that one misinterpretation could have catastrophic consequences. The weight of history pressed down with every step, yet, amidst it all, there was beauty. The vault was not just a place of secrecy, but of preservation, a monument to intelligence itself. In that moment, the recruit understood the gravity of the training ahead. He was not simply learning to navigate corridors or operate machines. He was being inducted into a system where memory, intuition, and observation were as important as any file or server. He had to learn to trust the echoes, to decipher their meaning, and to move through them without being overwhelmed. And then in the far corner of the chamber, a faint voice seemed to break through the background. Noise, soft, distorted, almost human, whispering a message that made him stop cold. A single sentence, fragmented yet unmistakable: everything you think you know is only a shadow. The recruit shivered, understanding that this was not fear, but revelation. Here in the Whispering Vault, echoes were not just reminders of the past, they were warnings, guides, and sometimes harbingers of events yet to unfold. His journey had only just begun, and already he sensed that the shadows around him carried more truth than any report, any debrief, or any classroom lesson could ever offer. The echoes that should not exist had made themselves known, and there was no turning back. As the recruit adjusted to the constant hum and dim lighting of the vault, a figure emerged from the shadows at the far end of the room, moving with a deliberate calm that made the walls themselves seem to pause in recognition. This was a man who had long been the legend of the facility, a master operative whose presence alone demanded attention. Yet he never spoke. His face was a mask of composed intensity, and his eyes, dark and unreadable, seemed to penetrate the very consciousness of those who observed him. The handlers called him the Whisperer, a title earned not through words, but through actions and the uncanny ability to convey meaning without uttering a single sound. The recruit felt a mix of awe and trepidation as the Whisperer approached. His movements slow but precise, as if the very floor beneath him responded to his silent rhythm. Every operative in the room instinctively stepped aside, leaving a corridor of reverence for this enigma, and the recruit realized that in this place, reputation was built on deeds rather than titles. The Whisperer paused, tilting his head slightly toward the recruit, and in that small gesture communicated volumes. Observation, patience, the importance of seeing without reacting. He moved on, gliding past data arrays and monitors, occasionally adjusting a cable, tapping a screen, or pointing subtly toward a file without a word. Yet his guidance was unmistakable. The recruit felt as though invisible threads were being pulled, aligning his perception with the hidden patterns of the vault. The handler whispered in his ear, "Watch him closely. He will teach you the language of silence." Intelligence is not always spoken. Often it is understood. Following the Whisperer's path, the recruit noticed subtle indicators. A flickering light signaling a recently accessed file, a shifted panel revealing hidden storage, the placement of a pen atop an encrypted notebook, all silent cues that held as much significance as any briefing. Hours passed, yet time felt distorted. The vault had its own rhythm, and the Whisperer was its metronome. The recruit began to perceive the unspoken narrative, the patterns of information retrieval, the signals embedded in ordinary movements, the way tension and calm could coexist in perfect balance. Then, a moment arrived when the Whisperer stopped before a console, eyes fixed on an empty chair across the room. With a slow motion of his hand, he gestured toward a set of encrypted files, indicating their priority without uttering a syllable. The recruit approached, hands slightly trembling, and understood instinctively which files demanded attention. Each file seemed to hum with the weight of clandestine operations, each containing threads that, if followed, could alter global intelligence strategies. For the next hours, the recruit shadowed the Whisperer, observing without speaking, feeling the unspoken dialogue between operative and environment. Patterns became visible, intentions readable, and an understanding blossomed. Mastery in the vault was not about knowledge alone, but about intuition, perception, and silent communication. As the night deepened, the Whisperer finally paused near a reinforced vault door, gesturing subtly toward the recruit to follow. The door led to a chamber no operative entered casually, the repository of the most sensitive intelligence within the vault. The recruit understood that this silent guide was preparing him for tests beyond mere comprehension. Tests of judgment, observation, and the courage to act in absolute silence. And then, almost imperceptibly, the Whisperer tilted his head again, eyes meeting the recruit's, conveying a single, powerful truth. In a place built on secrets, silence was the language of survival, and those who mastered it would see what others could not. The lesson was clear. Words could deceive, yet actions, when observed carefully, told the real story. The man who spoke without words had just spoken volumes, and the recruit would carry that understanding into every shadowed corridor, every encrypted file, and every echo of the vault that awaited him. The silent master had shown him that in the world of intelligence, perception was power, and the ability to listen with your eyes and speak with none could change everything. The vault's corridors grew colder as the recruit followed the Whisperer deeper into the facility, the faint hum of machinery blending with the distant echo of unseen footsteps. Ahead, a set of frosted glass panels separated a subsection of the vault, their opaque surfaces concealing the activity within, leaving only shadows to hint at what lay beyond. The handler paused briefly, glancing at the recruit with a gaze that combined caution and expectation. "Behind that glass," she whispered, "is where some of the most sensitive operations occur. You won't hear much, and you may see even less. But you will understand everything you need if you pay attention." The recruit stepped closer, squinting against the diffuse light filtering through the frosted surfaces. Shadows moved with deliberate purpose, figures bending over consoles, hands gesturing in subtle signals, movements that seemed ordinary until he realized the precision of their choreography. The room beyond was a theater of intelligence, every action meaningful, every motion intentional. The Whisperer gestured for the recruit to observe, not intervene, and a chill ran down his spine as he noticed a shadow pause. Mid-step, a hand resting lightly on a console, as if testing the weight of the unseen world. The hum of servers was punctuated by occasional faint clicks, cryptic communications passing silently through secure channels. The frosted glass served both as shield and barrier. It concealed the identities of operatives while allowing their patterns and intentions to be discerned by those who could interpret subtle cues. A monitor reflected ghostly images of intercepted transmissions, encrypted messages moving across networks in real time, their contents hidden from view, but their significance palpable. The recruit noticed a figure who appeared to hesitate, then moved decisively, gesturing to another operative who responded instantly, an intricate ballet of information and decision-making that occurred entirely without words. The Whisperer's hand swept toward a small panel embedded in the glass, and the recruit instinctively knew to watch the exchange through it. A faint light blinked in a pattern, a signal coded not for machines but for trained eyes. As he focused, he realized the shadows behind the glass were speaking in a language built on precision, timing, and instinct. Each gesture had meaning, each pause held intention, and every shadow reflected the consequences of choices made in secrecy. The recruit's heartbeat accelerated as he began to decode the interactions. Sensing the weight of responsibility in the unseen operations, one false interpretation could unravel months of preparation, compromise an agent overseas, or expose a covert channel. And yet, amidst the tension, there was artistry, a rhythm to the intelligence being enacted that was mesmerizing, almost hypnotic. The Whisperer leaned close, his silent presence guiding the recruit's perception, emphasizing patterns, signaling where attention mattered most. Not everything hidden is dangerous, his eyes seemed to convey, but everything observed is critical. Learn to read the shadows, and you can act before the threat is even seen. The recruit felt a shiver as the realization sank in. In the vault, true mastery was not just in collecting information, but in interpreting movement, understanding intention, and perceiving subtle cues invisible to the untrained eye. He watched as a shadow paused at a console, fingers hovering, then executed a sequence of precise movements. The encrypted information transferring silently, unseen by anyone who lacked the skill to observe. Every shadow held a story, every action a ripple in the complex web of intelligence maintained beneath the city. And when the shadows aligned, a message emerged, clear only to those who could read between the lines, deciphering truth from gesture, intent from hesitation, and the profound weight of silence from motion alone. The recruit realized in that moment that he had been initiated into a world where the most critical operations occurred not in open debate, but behind frosted glass in silence, observed only by those who had trained their eyes, minds, and instincts to capture the hidden reality of espionage. And as he stepped back from the glass, the handler whispered, "Remember this room, its shadows, and its lessons. Everything you witness here will inform every choice you make in the vault. Watch, understand, and let the shadows guide you." The recruit nodded, feeling the enormity of the learning unfolding around him. The unseen threads of intelligence intertwining, and the haunting realization that in this place, observation was as vital as action, and every shadow held a secret that could change everything. The hum of servers deep within the vault had taken on a strange cadence, a rhythm that the recruit had not noticed before. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet it carried an urgency that demanded attention. As he followed the whisperer down a narrower corridor, the handler's voice, barely above a whisper, cut through the tension. Pay attention. The vault sometimes speaks in ways you cannot ignore. Ahead, a cluster of consoles blinked with synchronized pulses, their lights indicating encrypted communications moving across the globe in real time. Among the thousands of signals, one anomaly had caught the attention of senior operatives, a sequence that did not belong. A transmission so carefully disguised that it might have been overlooked by anyone less trained. The whisperer halted, eyes fixed on the monitor, and without a word, gestured toward a console. The recruit leaned forward, squinting at lines of encrypted data scrolling like a waterfall of symbols, numbers, and coded patterns. Then it struck him. A single repeating sequence pulsed more deliberately than the others. A rhythm out of place. A signal that seemed to echo with intention rather than randomness. The handler approached, her expression grave, yet controlled. "That signal," she said softly, "could change the trajectory of every operation currently active worldwide. One misinterpretation, one delay, and the consequences could be catastrophic." The recruit felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders, understanding instantly that intelligence was no longer just information, was life and death, decisions and repercussions measured in the milliseconds it took to interpret patterns accurately. Every pulse, every flicker, every anomaly in the data demanded immediate scrutiny. The whisperer's hand swept across the console, drawing the recruit's attention to a hidden subset of the signal. A fragment designed to hide its origin, yet embedded with a message so critical that the vault itself had issued an alert. As the recruit processed the sequence, his mind raced to comprehend its implications. Agents in the field relied on the accuracy of this signal. Foreign networks might already be responding. Every second counted. He observed the whisperer's subtle cues, the tilt of his head, the precise pause of his fingers over the keyboard, the slight narrowing of his eyes, gestures that communicated strategy, urgency, and caution without a single word spoken. Hours seemed to compress as the team worked in near-perfect silence. The only audible sounds, the clicks of keyboards, the faint buzz of cooling systems, and the soft intake of breath from those present. Each operative moved with absolute precision, following protocols ingrained through years of training, yet adapting instantly to the unexpected nature of the signal. The recruit realized that he had never encountered intelligence in such a living form. Dynamic, unpredictable, yet governed by rules that demanded respect and understanding. And then, just as the pulse reached its apex, a sudden confirmation flashed across the central monitora's successful decryption. A revelation of intentions that had been hidden in layers of obfuscation. The signal had spoken, revealing information that would alter ongoing operations, redirect strategies, and avert potential disaster. Relief and exhilaration rippled through the room, though no words were exchanged. The Whisperer nodded imperceptibly, acknowledging the recruit's focus and comprehension, teaching him once more that, in the vault, outcomes were often determined not by who spoke, but by who understood. The recruit felt a surge of clarity. Intelligence was not static. It was fluid, alive, and often demanded instantaneous interpretation. The signal had changed everything, but more importantly, it had imparted a lesson about perception, timing, and the critical value of observation. In that moment, standing amidst the glow of monitors and the ever-present hum of the vault, he understood that the shadows, the silence, and the signals together formed a language of their own, one that could determine the course of history, if read correctly. And as the Whisperer stepped back, fading into the subtle darkness of the chamber, the recruit knew that he had witnessed the heartbeat of the vault itself, a rhythm that would guide every choice, every analysis, and every action he would take within these walls for years to come. The vault had spoken, the signal had changed everything, and the recruit's initiation into the world of living intelligence was irrevocably underway. The night had fallen over the city above, yet deep beneath the streets, the vault pulsed with activity that made time feel almost irrelevant. The recruit stood near the heart of the facility, the lessons of the past days replaying in his mind, the whispers, the shadows, the signals that had shaped his understanding of intelligence, and the silent teachings of the Whisperer. Tonight, however, was unlike any other night he had experienced. A sudden alert flashed across the main console, bathing the room in crimson light. The vault had detected an incoming breach, subtle yet sophisticated, designed to test the facility's defenses. Senior operatives moved with seamless coordination, initiating protocols that were rehearsed countless times, yet never predictable, as the unknown always demanded adaptation. "This is it," whispered the handler, her tone calm but carrying the weight of urgency. "Tonight, the vault opens not just for you, but for everyone who trusts it to protect secrets too sensitive for the outside world." The recruit felt his heartbeat synchronize with the hum of the facility, each pulse echoing the tension of impending challenge. As doors sealed and automated barriers activated, the Whisperer appeared silently beside him, eyes scanning the room, assessing threats, and communicating strategy without a word. The recruit knew instinctively to follow his lead, moving past consoles, reading encrypted data feeds, and monitoring the subtle vibrations that signaled changes in security protocols. Then it began the movement of shadows within the encrypted corridors. Faint and almost imperceptible, signals that something or someone had breached the perimeter. Lights flickered, the hum of servers intensified, and the vault seemed to exhale, as if aware that its secrets were being challenged. The team executed the protocols with precision. Doors locked, compartments sealed, and countermeasures deployed in a silent ballet of intelligence operations. The recruit watched, understanding that every second mattered. One misstep, one hesitation, and the integrity of decades of intelligence could be compromised. The Whisperer gestured subtly toward a panel, guiding the recruit to intercept a transmission that had slipped through the standard filters. Using the skills he had learned over the past days, the observation of shadows, the understanding of signals, and the comprehension of silent cues, the recruit intercepted and analyzed the critical data just in time. The threat, a sophisticated intrusion meant to compromise sensitive information, was neutralized before it could even manifest fully. The vault had defended itself, but not without revealing its lessons. Intelligence was not static. It was alive, adaptive, and demanded vigilance at all times. As the red lights faded and normal operations resumed, the recruit looked around the chamber, absorbing the gravity of what had just occurred. He realized that the vault was more than a facility. It was a living archive, a sentinel, and a teacher all at once. The Whisperer finally turned toward him, nodding subtly, conveying respect, acknowledgement, and a silent approval that spoke louder than any words. The recruit had survived the night the vault opened and had proven, in small yet significant ways, that he had begun to understand its language, its rhythms, and its unwavering dedication to the protection of secrets. He knew now that every shadow, every whisper, every signal, and every door beneath the city was part of a larger narrative, one that required mastery of observation, intuition, and discretion. Standing amidst the dim glow of consoles and the quiet hum of servers, the recruit felt a profound respect for the vault itself. He had walked through thresholds few would ever see, observed echoes that should not exist, learned from a man who spoke without words, read shadows behind frosted glass, interpreted a signal that changed everything, and now had endured the night the vault opened. The lessons were immense, the responsibilities immense, but so too was the clarity. The Whispering Vault was not merely a repository of intelligence. It was the heartbeat of an invisible world, and he had become at last a part of it.